Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, an FBI warning all about China. The agency's chief says Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc on Americans and harm infrastructure like water and power supplies.
Steps China was taking, in other words, to find and prepare to destroy or degrade the civilian critical infrastructure that keeps us safe and prosperous.
Reports say China has vowed to keep its hands out of the 2024 U.S. election process. But current and historic records show the current promise may not align with Beijing's history. Leaders in big tech getting grilled by Congress yet again. This time, it's about the risks their products pose to young Americans. And the Pentagon is restricting more Chinese firms for their ties to the regime's military. But what impact will it have? On Capitol Hill Wednesday, FBI Director Christopher Wray warning Congress of China's cyber operations targeting critical U.S. infrastructure. His testimony comes as the federal government thwarted a Beijing-backed hacking campaign. NTD's Sam Wong has the details.
At a committee hearing today, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned that Beijing is leveraging its cyber capability to target critical U.S. infrastructure. That includes both military and civilians.
From water utilities and the electrical grid to oil and natural gas pipelines, Beijing state-backed hackers are targeting major infrastructure across America. According to FBI Director Christopher Wray, the operation is huge, to the point that Chinese hackers outnumber the FBI's total cyber resources by a staggering 50-to-1 ratio. During a testimony before the House Select Committee on the CCP, Wray warned that Beijing's threat to U.S. infrastructure could result in real-world harm to Americans' physical safety.
Steps China was taking, in other words, to find and prepare to destroy or degrade the civilian critical infrastructure that keeps us safe and prosperous.
The hearing comes as the Justice Department announced it is disabling a China-backed hacking campaign codenamed Volt Typhoon. The group had attacked hundreds of office routers in order to access their data. In the face of rising cyber threats from the CCP, the committee's ranking member Raja Krishnamurthy vowed there would be repercussions.
First, we will attribute it back to you if it's activated. Secondly, that could be an act of war. And third, we will respond decisively.
In addition, lawmakers fear that Beijing's cyber campaign could compromise Washington's ability to help Taiwan, especially during a potential invasion by China. Some members of Congress told me we still have a long way ahead of us.
Are you confident in our responsiveness and readiness when it comes to tackling Chinese cyber threats in the U.S., and how vulnerable are we at this point?
We're very vulnerable. I think we have a good offense. I think we have good partnerships with foreign countries. But in terms of just securing our homeland and our domestic critical infrastructure, that's where I think we have a long way to go.
This is going to be a persistent and chronic threat coming from the Chinese Communist Party for as long as any of us are around.
Reporting from Capitol Hill, Sam Wong, NTD News.
For more details on Chinese-owned social media app TikTok, we spoke to John Mills, retired Army colonel and former director for cybersecurity of the Defense Department. John Mills, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Tiffany, thank you. Always an honor to be on your show.
Now, lawmakers are pressing the tech CEOs of TikTok, X, and Meta in a Senate hearing today. This is on online child safety. Now, how has the social media landscape changing throughout the years become more vulnerable to children, especially from adversaries?
Yeah, this is an important one, Tiffany. And I think the one you didn't mention, and I don't know if there's a way to subpoena them to give testimony, is TikTok. And TikTok obviously is controlled and is not really, they don't really have TikTok in China. They have some other variants of it that are much more throttled. They have TikTok in Taiwan, but they're good about filtering that in certain ways. Here, we don't do that. Or to the best of my knowledge, we don't do that. And TikTok is really, it really is intended to scramble brains. And the youth, that is more and more where they get it from. And it's creating this psychological addiction to always reaching for their phone and seeing what the latest thing is on TikTok.
On that note, reports are showing, I think TikTok CEO is present. A lot of it is focused on the fentanyl trafficking and how social media is a big vehicle for that. How do you view that, though? What is the solution here? It seems we've had a lot of hearings, especially just on TikTok, but also social media in general. But what are the steps needed to create change?
I think we have to make an example out of TikTok and drive it out of the American market. The Trump administration was headed that way. The Democrats have been a bit hesitant to throttle TikTok, but it is digital fentanyl. Nothing good comes out of it. And the test is always there. If it's so good, why doesn't China allow it in China?
On the note of China, actually, I want to zoom out into Chinese hacking groups now. The FBI and Justice Department have disabled a pervasive Chinese hacking network that targeted thousands of critical infrastructure. Now, that's according to a Reuters exclusive. What was China's goal here in targeting these areas?
Well, I mean, we have 18 critical infrastructures as designated by DHS. There's a move, and there was a letter that just came out to make the maritime industry a 19th. But all of this is, you would call this in military terms, advanced force operations, preparation of the battle, operational preparation of the battlefield, intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And this includes possibly even placing malware. So when the time is right, they can simply try to flip the switch, and their malware makes sure certain things don't work or work in ways that are destructive.
John Mills, thank you so much for your time.
Tiffany, thank you so much.
Besides the FBI, the Central Intelligence Agency is also weighing in on the Chinese Communist Party. CIA Chief William Burns says China is a bigger threat to the U.S. than Russia. He's also said that in the past 2 years, the CIA has more than doubled its budget for countering China. And those efforts aren't limited to the U.S., noting that the CIA was stepping up efforts across the world to compete with China. Big tech companies are back in the Capitol Hill hot seat. In Washington, members of Congress drilled the CEOs of social media companies, TikTok, Meta, X, and Snapchat. The top fear, child exploitation. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports from Washington.
Concerns are mounting that social media platforms aren't doing enough to keep kids safe online. The bipartisan nature of this topic was on full display today. Usually at hearings, we see a lot of friction between Republicans and Democrats, but today all of this pressure was directed at the witnesses themselves. One example of this was when Senator Josh Hawley pressured the CEO of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, to stand up and apologize to the families of the victims of child and drug trafficking. Now, while this hearing was focused on all of the social media platforms, on multiple occasions, senators pointed to the unique challenges with TikTok, which is owned by a Chinese company under the direct influence of the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok has become a, quote, platform of choice for predators to access, engage, and groom children for abuse.
China-based employees of your company have repeatedly accessed non-public data of United States citizens. Why should you not be banned in the United States of America?
Senator, I disagree with your characterization. Many of what you have said, we have explained in a lot of detail.
I am deeply concerned about the collection of data, information.
And here in the U.S., you look at what it is spreading, the challenges, the children that have lost their lives. It's completely unacceptable.
Dumb down our children or in some way launch up psychological warfare against America.
Absolutely. We know these platforms are also used for propaganda.
And on that note of propaganda, Senator Tom Cotton made a fierce display of this when he asked TikTok CEO over and over again to acknowledge an ongoing genocide in China. Listen to this.
Is the Chinese government committing genocide against the Uyghur people?
Actually, Senator, I talk mainly about my company, and I'm here to talk about what TikTok does.
Yes or no? You're here to give testimony that's truthful and honest and complete. Yes. Are you scared that you'll lose your job if you say anything negative about the Chinese Communist Party?
Now, there are several bipartisan bills to address the issues with TikTok and other social media platforms, but they oftentimes face roadblocks here in Congress, with advocacy groups speaking out against the implications it could have for free speech and censorship. One senator telling me bluntly, these companies have too much influence in the halls of Congress. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
To keep American technology from aiding the Chinese military, the Pentagon just listed a dozen more Chinese tech firms it says are working with the Beijing's forces. The updated list was released Wednesday and includes a memory chipmaker, an AI company, and a LiDAR technology manufacturer, among other companies. The list works more like a bad reputation label than an actual ban. Its purpose is to warn U.S. entities about the firm's ties to the Chinese military, so American businesses would be more cautious about conducting cooperation with them. And while it may not ban U.S. firms from working with them, the 2024 National Defense Act does ban the Pentagon from working with any Chinese companies on the list. Many Chinese companies that self-describe as civil entities fail to declare their dual-use products. That's related to China's military civil fusion strategy, under which civilian firms are used to help advance Beijing's military development. The U.S. is expanding the efforts to counter that tactic. China has reportedly agreed not to interfere with the 2024 U.S. presidential election. CNN reports that Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping made the promise to President Biden in person last November during the U.S.-China summit in San Francisco. Months later, the U.S. National Security Advisor just confirmed the same message with China's foreign minister last weekend. They spoke during meetings in Thailand. China has been accused of interfering with past bids for the White House. Will things really be different this time? First, China still poses a great threat to U.S. cybersecurity. Reports show that in recent months, American intelligence discovered that China hacked into U.S. maritime and transportation systems. The move has been seen as a trial run by Beijing to see if it could disturb U.S. military aid towards Taiwan in the event it decides to invade the island. Zooming out, how did China meddle in 2022's U.S. election? An investigative report sheds light on the tactics. It's based on national intelligence declassified last December. It shows Chinese propaganda arms used TikTok to target the presidential candidates from both parties. The content was able to rack up tens of millions of views in the U.S. The report also mentioned in 2021, Beijing identified U.S. lawmakers to either punish them for their anti-China views or reward them for supporting Beijing. Microsoft also reported that Chinese hackers posed as American voters online. They used artificial intelligence to promote divisive content during the 2022 midterm elections. Looking ahead to the upcoming election,
I think we can see a lot more. There's clear bias by the Chinese Communist Party to sow division in U.S. politics, period. Whether or not they're favoring, Donald Trump over Joe Biden, I can't imagine actually that they'd be favoring Donald Trump because he, under his administration, put some of the toughest sanctions in place, which have then been carried on by this current administration. But if they can if they can affect local state elections and or, congressional elections, I think they will try to do that and put people who are sympathetic.
U.S. officials say they are preparing for a variety of possible foreign interference attempts that might occur before the election, especially from top U.S. adversaries like China, Russia, and Iran. How trustworthy are the numbers from the Chinese Communist Party? Let's take a look at China's reported fixed asset investments last year, 50 trillion yuan. China's National Bureau of Statistics says that represents a 3% rise from 2022. But there's a problem. That figure is not higher than that of the year 2022, which totaled 57 trillion yuan. So from 2022 to 2023, China actually saw a 12% drop. Next, we'd like to take a moment to share some of your comments about our show. We recently reported on Chinese college students who have been denied entry into the U.S. due to spying suspicions. One viewer took a sarcastic jab at the situation, writing, "China declares war on the U.S.," and then asks, "Why won't you educate our kids?" Another viewer, Vivian's Private Kitchen, offered up a suggestion that the Chinese students getting deported should also have their information stored on a database and shared with America's allies. Don't forget to tell us what you think of today's show, or if you have an idea for something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for more than 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Here's what to look out for in our second half. House Speaker Mike Johnson shedding light on forced organ harvesting in China. He's vowing to punish the Chinese Communist Party for human rights violations. Money flowing from China to the U.S. and Japan. China's stocks have lost trillions of dollars in recent years. A closer look at why. And a complaint from New Zealand that Washington has neglected the Pacific. What's behind the underlying power contest in the region? More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.